Hey, I'm John Harris, and this is my sister here. This is
Hi,
Catherine.
I'm Catherine Harris, or Kat Harris. We're sibling builders, and we always like to work together on everything. Some of us own a collaboration. There's a third one, my sister Kelly, and we always help each other out in some capacity. So this is my brother's build. He did about 90% of this.
It's great. I love how you work together as siblings. As I've walked around the show, I've seen some of Kelly's builds and some of the other stuff you guys have worked on. So that's fantastic. So then, let's get an overview of what this project is.
All right, so what we have here, this is called The Adventures of Ace Brickman. So Ace Brickman was a character that comes from the Detective Office modular set. So I saw that, and I thought that the story that LEGO had behind that, which was prohibition and bootlegging of sweets, I thought it was a cute story, but I wanted to get the backstory for Ace Brickman. So last year, Kat and I were here at this convention, and we came up with the idea of pairing a physical build with the photography and building a comic book that's based off of it. So that's what we have. So we have a story that takes us through the adventures of Ace Brickman here. And then most of the story is still represented in physical brick in the build. So we'll start at the beginning. The idea behind the story is that it's Prohibition era. Prohibition just started in 1920. And Ace has been tasked by a young lady to find her brother. So the story opens with Ace receiving a letter written by this lady looking for a brother who had come back from World War I and had fallen in with the gang. So if we look at the bill itself and we go down to Ace Brickman's office, we have Ace Brickman having a meeting inside with that young lady. And then right next door in the apartment, we have her, and her name's Mary, actually writing that letter that starts off her story. So Ace decides he's going to take the case and want to set out and find out what the James Street gang is up to and try to uncover and see if she can find that brother. So it opens here, and we can see Ace decides he knows the McKee brothers are part of the local gang. So he stops by the warehouse that they have, and he's looking through the window, and he's determining that they have way too much money and guns inside to be any legitimate business. We can take the top off there.
Yeah, you've got interiors as well. I noticed a lot of lighting in the buildings as well.
Yeah, so I chose to light as much as I could because it's hard for people at shows to see the interiors, and I'm not going to be able to take all the buildings apart and show off those interiors. So I think it gives people a glimpse of the inside, so that I'm showing off all the work I put into them. So here we have that warehouse where all the bootlegging operations are happening. After that, Ace goes back and kind of starts feeding this information to Mary. The other things he uncovers is we can see up here on the train bridge, he's looking at the McKee brothers sneaking in some rye whiskey from Canada. So he finds that portion of the operation, and then right next door on the American side of the border, we have Old Man Earl, and he has a moonshining shack up here where he's making some moonshine. And Ace deduces that they're taking this back to that McKee building and they're cutting it with the rye whiskey in order to sell it and make a little bit more money. So that's what we have pictured right here. We have the federal agents, the Prohees, taking a bribe from one of the McKee boys. After that, the last thing that Ace has to kind of uncover here is that, or how they're selling it. So that brings us to the Blind Pig soda shop. So at the very bottom floor of this is our soda shop, and it looks to be an honest business. But as we look at the side of that, we can see that a few months ago it had been the Black Pig Tavern. And Ace looks inside and sees a very long line for the bathroom. And he also sees that everyone inside there, I'll take the top off and we can see, is also dressed pretty fabulously for an ice cream shop.
That's definitely not your average looking soda shop right there.
No, at least not the average looking customers in there. So he figures from that they haven't really changed the ways of the Black Pig, and instead they're running a speakeasy upstairs, and that's the access point. So now that Ace has kind of uncovered the entirety of the criminality that the gang has in their operation. He goes back, and in his final meeting, he reports this to Mary, and he finds Mary's boyfriend is the competing gang boss. So he realizes that he's been kind of played here, and that this entire time he's been investigating the Irish gang in town, and it's just been to feed that information back to the Italians who are moving in and allowing them to have a takeover. So that's the basis of the story here, and some of the other things we want to talk about here is the nods to Lego builders. So you want to take that, Kat?
Yeah. So one thing that I think Lego has always done well is storytelling, obviously in sets, whether it's in movies now. There's a lot of amazing details that go into it. So when you're thinking about the inspiration for this with modulars, my brother wanting to do this Ace Brickman thing, we really wanted to include some of that with the modular. So we have a profile of Ace at the beginning where they speak about his work history, and they talk about how he recently uncovered a money laundering scheme, and obviously that's a reference to the brick bank. And then we wanted to do a lot of little prohibition jokes in there, because I feel like whenever Lego creates anything, they always try to have extra details that people can appreciate. So you have the blind pig, which is actually terminology. I did my research and watched some Ken Burns Prohibition for this.
Did some deep research.
Yeah. You have to have something on while you're building in the Lego room, and nothing says pay attention to Lego like some Ken Burns documentary. So the blind pig is actually a term for a speakeasy. So it's, wouldn't be well known, but if somebody decides to research it, you can see that, okay, that's exciting. And additionally, you can see what we've done with the font of that sign. If you read only the bigger letters, it's going to reference the fact that maybe, in fact, there's alcohol there, because good spirits and frosty pints are much bigger than the other words that make up that sentence.
Subtle clues.
Exactly. You don't want to be too obvious. Some things, you have a lot of puns and stuff like that. So my brother, I swear, he had a couple puns, and that's why he built this entire thing. I know he says it's because of the modular with Ace Brickman, but I think he just came up with some good puns, and he's like, we're making a whole mock around this.
That's really the best way to inspire your Lego builds.
Absolutely. So he's looking in the warehouse, and one of the things that was a big challenge is getting all the angles right in the photography, but we really wanted to make sure that this something sure smells fishy around here line was highlighted with fish in the dumpster, because you'd always see things like that from Lego. They'd have little fish or something like that in trash cans. And then a little bit later on in the story, he's looking for Mary's brother, and as revealed already, Mary's brother doesn't exist, right? That's a just completely made up story to help inspire Ace to research this gang. So at one point, he's brooding in his office at night, drinking his scotch, and he's thinking about how, oh my goodness, I just can't find this guy, but I see his face everywhere, and it's the classic Lego smiley face that's in every single modular. And, it's really funny, so a lot of builders are going to see that and appreciate it. So
then let's talk about a little, I know John was just showing the comics there. So once you had the builds completed, what was that transition like then to creating the whole comic book and kind of the series there?
So we've been talking about what the story was going to be for the last year and kind of figuring it out. So it was last week that we actually got down to all the hard work of it. So I brought the build down last week, and we got together. It took a little effort because her flight got delayed, and we lost a whole lot of time that we were supposed to be working on this. As it always happens with Lego builds. So we went down, and we had all of the buildings done, and we had known what the story was going to be, but we hadn't gone through and written each one of the frames there. So that was last week. We kind of came through. We ended up making a story that was a lot longer than what we have in front of us, and realized there was way too much. So this is kind of the pared down and simplified story.
I think it's a great idea to transition from the physical build and the physical bricks and be able to tell the story more with just the individual scenes there.
I agree. I mean, I think I always remember one of my favorite themes. I really loved the adventurers, and I loved the Gale Storm and Sam Sinister. And
for sure, yeah, one of the best.
I love all those stories, and they have a very classic feel. So we're trying to come up with something that is really reminiscent of our childhood. There are so many. We had Lego Maniac, was still around. We had that, and LEGO's done a really good job of always supplementing their stories with builds, and then their builds with stories. So I think as A-Falls, we try to do that whenever we can as well.
I think a big part of this build was I wanted people to walk by. It's mostly architecture and terrain build here. I wanted people to walk by and look at it and take that second look. So last year, that was kind of the inspiration. I saw people walking by, getting a sampling of what it was about, taking some pictures and moving on. I wanted people, maybe they didn't read all the slides, but they looked down and they were able to do like the Where's Waldo and find a scene down here and then find it in the build. And I think that would uncover a couple of things that they wouldn't have otherwise noticed.
And the comics are all photos, right? So were those photos taken kind of on different parts of the layout here for the most part?
Yes, that was one of the exciting things we've done. We've done a lot of late nights this week with weather, both me trying to get here. I couldn't get to his house. He had to meet me in Portland for Bricks Cascade.
The struggles of collaboration.
Yes. Well, I would have never foreseen getting snowed in Vegas for 2 days, which is completely ridiculous that it snowed and they didn't have any plane de-icers. And then it snowed here in Portland. And so that meant that school was canceled. So it was just one thing after another. But after many, many late nights, we figured it out. We got a lot of pictures. They're just, we did some filters on them. They're just iPhone photos, nothing insane, but we didn't really have the time to go back and, take different photos if we didn't love them. So we tried to be a little bit conscientious of the fact that most likely people weren't going to read this as if it were a comic when we took the photos. They were going to read it, again, as a supplemental to a build. They don't have time to have it right in front of them, so we made the frames a lot bigger. I literally have never made or read a comic book in my life, so I had to consult some people.
You're very well experienced for this.
I think so. So we took some pictures, basically, did a couple filter options, figured that out. So minor photo editing, some filters, some background images. And then when we got to Bricks Cascade, just started hounding some people and asking them, I'm like, oh, I know, you know comics. What kind of fonts do you use? How does this work? Explain it to me. And of course they were like, how much time do you have? I'm like, no, I literally just need to know fonts and boxes and how you lay out the basics of it. So I'm sure there's tons of opportunity, but we had a lot of fun. Photographs are pretty easy because, again, once you start editing them, they don't have to be the best quality. You're trying to strip away a lot of the detail anyway to give it that noir comic-y look. So it was fun. And, kudos to my iPhone. It did an okay job at it. Yeah.
One thing I wanted to mention about the layout here as well is the use of kind of the masonry bricks in both the buildings and the road there. So talk about how you were able to incorporate that into the build.
So I had been working with my other sister, and I saw the way that they had done the brick-built roads, and I thought it looked really good, and it added a whole lot. Except I didn't want to go with what they would do in a more modern context for the other builds they have here and have a 32 base plate. So I wanted to narrow the roads up so that we have a single car can pass on each side. And then I thought having a cobblestone look would be pretty good. And I looked at my bins of Legos, but I had a whole lot more red than I had of the gray. And I'm really glad I went with the red because I think it adds a whole lot to, extending that texture out. And I think of all the things I wanted in all of these buildings is adding as much relief and texture as possible. So it's good to get that on their horizontal surfaces as well.
Right. Well, I love both the layout and the comics here, so thank you for all the work you both put into this. I'm so glad you were able to finish it all in time for Bricks Cascade. So I appreciate you chatting with me about it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.